Fuck up. Come on, sweetheart. See what you got.
Fuck is wrong with you? Why don't you leave us alone?
You're hungry.
You ever heard of pizza?
I like liver. And onions. And pig. Pig. Come on! Come get it!
Toast, fuck! Son of a bitch.
Hey, welcome to Ben and Curt Till It Hurts, the culture cast caught at the crossroads of curation and masturbation. My name's Ben.
And I'm Curt.
And this Texorcist month thing just keeps getting better and better, Curtis.
I don't think it's going to be a month, Ben.
It might be significantly more than a month, but we'll get to that at the end of the show.
The annual season of the Texorcism.
Yeah. We'll do it all again next year. The parallels just keep growing and growing.
I know.
Right? I was surprised. I didn't realize when we started this. I thought like, wow, that's kind of a random pairing. But
I did too. Like I didn't have like I wasn't like under ace in the sleeve or anything.
Yeah.
I was just like, these are weird, but
Yeah. Well, we've gone through the classic first installments.
Mm-hmm.
We've gone through the controversial second installments. And now we make it to the third installments that seem to be regarded by many as like returns to form, or at least were portrayed as being returns to form.
Yeah, pretty divided, I think, with the people that see it. A lot of people just disregard them, but then each film kind of has like a crowd that's kind of, I almost want to say I like it more than the first one. There's a weird collective that seems to like each film quite a bit. These also both came out in 1990.
They did.
Which I realized today.
And they both feel like they came out in 1990.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's do Texas. You want to do Texas first, or?
Texas first.
Okay, I feel like Exorcist 3 might be a little more controversial between us.
Exorcist 3, I'm going to need you to tell me why you like it so much.
Okay.
But Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, what did you think of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3?
I loved it.
I loved it, dude.
Yes, finally we agree on one.
We agree on this movie.
God, it was, I didn't know what to expect, and I honestly assumed it was going to be awful.
Yeah, me too.
But it kind of takes its own shape as this half reboot, half sequel, and just kind of, it's just a wild ride, really.
It feels like a love letter to slasher movies, which, like, I wasn't really aware of the chronology of slasher movies, but I looked it up, and they had reached their heyday and were, like, most of the way through their decline by 1990, right?
Yeah.
Like, 1990 was around the time when fucking Jason Goes to Hell was coming out,
Yeah,
right? Like, the really bad ones.
The 80s was, the Friday the 13th movies were kind of the Saw movies of the 80s. I think aside from, like, 2 or 3 years in the 80s, every year, every Halloween was a new Friday the 13th film. Mm-hmm. And so it really kind of for how many movies there are in the slasher genre, it did kind of come and go
really fast,
pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah. But this movie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3: Leatherface, I was flabbergasted by how much it reminded me of those slasher movies that I loved watching when I was young.
Yeah, I think for me the thing that I liked about it the most was franchise films kind of have this like weird tendency to, I don't know, maybe I should have thought of a better way to say this, but they'll get a reputation and then the franchise kind of becomes what that reputation is, and it gets pretty far from the first film, you know, like movies like Rambo and Die Hard and even slasher films. They get these reputations for nothing like in the first film, and by the time you get to, you know, the third or fourth one, it's pretty outlandish and crazy. And I think Leatherface is kind of just like, it almost feels like somebody made a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, but had only been told about the first one. Like they hadn't actually seen it. And so they just hear all these things. They're like, yeah, let's do that. And it was just a wild ride of like half ideas from the first one and weird sequences that,
some like straight lifts from the first one.
Yeah.
Like I kept seeing these moments that were just straight out of the first one. Mm-hmm. What am I thinking? Well, the most obvious one to me was the opening kind of harkened back to both of the first two.
Yeah.
Because they both open with a car driving, right? And then you kind of get to know the characters inside, and then they go to hell throughout the course of the movie. But like that was big. The gas station owner, is he the gas station owner? The guy with the hook for a hand.
Yeah.
Scratches his head in the same way that Chop Top scratches his head in the second one. There's Grandpa, right? Grandpa is very similar to how he looks in the first one.
And when, I don't remember if there actually was an actor playing Grandpa or if it was just a prop the whole time.
I think he was a prop.
In this one. Because
Yeah.
I know for part of it he was a prop because his face explodes. But
It was fucking sweet.
But I think, you know, weirdly though, there were a few things that, like, there's a little intro monologue that kind of makes it sound like it takes place after the first ones.
Yeah.
And then one thing that I thought was really cool and completely unnecessary was Leatherface has like a leg brace, which
because the chainsaw,
he dropped the chainsaw on his leg in the first one. So, but then like things would happen where you're like, there's no way that this takes place after the first one. Like, who's this? You know, who is this character? It doesn't make any sense.
Right. No, like very few of the characters, if any, like Leatherface might be the only character that crosses over.
Oh, Grandpa, but
yeah,
but I mean, there's like a Sally, the little girl, and there's a mother character that was long gone,
right,
in the original one.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I like it when a franchise completely disregards its own continuity.
Yeah, I mean, I get weirdly.
It's the same thing Mad Max does, by the way.
Is it?
Gives no fucks about continuity, and the whole series is better for it.
I can't say that I feel like there's like one way is better than the other way. As like a completionist, like part of me enjoys having that like you when you pick up every reference because you've seen the first 12.
It's like all the pieces fit together.
I find
in a satisfying way.
Enjoyable, but at the same time, you know, such as with this movie, it's nice when the filmmakers are like, nah, fuck all that stuff. We're just gonna give you like one good movie you can watch. Like, it's just a popcorn film. Just show up and watch people get massacred.
They made a movie that feels like the first one without trying to ape the first one.
Yeah.
Really. Like it looks at the first one, which helped by some accounts helped create the slasher genre. And then it sees what has happened to the slasher genre in the 16 years since that film and makes a latter-day slasher film that in many ways harkens right back to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like it, one of the things that I love that they really nailed, because they fucked it up so bad in the second one, was the family dynamic.
Yeah,
the family dynamic feels real again.
It does.
You know, in that first Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, one of the greatest parts is that dinner at the end when everyone comes together and they're all bouncing off each other, and you can see that they kind of hate and kind of love each other.
There's a real chemistry.
Yeah. So the chemistry is really good in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 as well.
And it's funny that you mention, you know, looking back on what the slasher genre had become and borrowing from that, because I knew I hadn't seen the film, but when I was watching it in the beginning, I felt like when he's cutting up the skin and making the mask, I was trying to figure out, it seemed really familiar, which happens to me sometimes because I watch a lot of like documentaries and stuff, so I'm like, maybe I saw this scene in a horror documentary or something. But as it turns out, New Line had just bought the rights to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so that scene was like a direct ripoff of their own franchise, Nightmare on Elm Street. The first Nightmare on Elm Street film has Freddy Krueger down in his like basement thing, creating his glove, and so they really pulled from that. And I was like, that's why
funny.
that looks familiar. Which I also got a kick out of, because I'm pretty sure that's not how leather works at all. I don't think you just take strips of raw bloody flesh and sew it together,
cut it up with scissors, and then
I'm pretty sure you have to dry it first and then and then put it together.
It cures on his face. His face makes the leather.
It sure does.
The salt from his sweat cures the skin. We'll figure all this out. Yeah. Man, this movie.
Yeah,
what a ride.
I really like how they. It's just like a big budgeted, like less artistic but more fun. And
I think the fun is artistic in its own way. I think this movie really nails that feeling of like, well, say for instance, speaking of the knee brace, there was no reason why he had to, during that scene where they're trying to change the tire and you see repeated shots of the squeaking leg walking, there was no reason he had to do that. But fucking Jeff Burr was like, no, this is going to be creepy. This is going to be a creepy way to do this. Let's do it this way. Or the screenwriter or whoever. But like my point is, the team was more creative than they needed to be. And I will say that the overwhelming feeling that I get from this movie is that it was a labor of love.
Yeah.
Whether or not they were totally happy with the end result, because I don't know if you read this in any of your research, but they made significant cuts.
Yeah.
To get it to get the X rating taken off and get an R rating put on. They cut out a lot of gore, so I can imagine that there were some bad feelings on the creative team of the film about that. Not that I read anything, but
well, I know too that as far as some of those creative decisions went, I had also read that what was the name of the director again?
Jeff Burr.
Jeff Burr was fired partway through the making of the film, and then hired again when New Line couldn't find anybody else that would do it.
Did you read that on the Wicked Horror article?
I actually read that. I rented the movie on Amazon, so they have like a trivia thing you can click on and read like all the different trivia. So I believe that was where.
Yeah, I read that on a fucking some website, but yeah.
That's
really
actually,
interesting story.
And another thing that these two films have in common, weirdly enough, is a lot of, apparently, very opinionated directors kind of fighting back and forth with studios to make a successful film versus the film they want to make. Mm-hmm. These movies really go side by side.
Yeah, they really do. They're just interlocking circles. Yeah, I really enjoy this movie.
Yeah,
it's just fun,
I think, where they have like the gas station, that was one of the more memorable things for me in the movie, was you have this gas station scene, which in the first one is already creepy enough. Like, that something is wrong here. But then this one is just like, what if we put a beat stall in it? You're just like, oh yeah, that's way worse. Gross. Yeah. And some of the dialogue in that scene especially, but even in the whole movie, is just like, I don't know the word for it, but it's just so appropriate. I actually had written down from the gas station attendant when he's screaming at the woman driver. He said, "You heifer butt, I'm gonna fuck you in hell. You want to fuck me? You know you do." And I was just like, "Wow, they're really just
wow, that's really good.
They're just slamming on the gas here." Like, there's also like in the beginning when they're looking through the big pits of gelatinous decomposed bodies.
Man, real good.
There's this. They're digging around, and there's just this line that one of the minor characters delivers that's just so real, which I always love in a movie. They're just like, this is fucked. Like, it's just like it's almost like he's not acting, like he just didn't know how nice the effects were going to be, and he was just like, this is fucked up. Like, why are we down here? Like, I'm up to my knees in fake human goo. Like, So, what did you think of the main characters?
I thought it was appropriate that they were dispatched with for the most part. Like, I thought it was appropriate that the male lead was... Well, okay, there were several leads, right? There's
Sure.
the main couple, and then there's Benny.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the main couple really worked as, like, typical fucking... This is who you expect to get chainsawed in half, right?
Yeah.
And the female lead was... Well, her arc is kind of weird, because, like, by the end, she, like, has learned to kill.
Yeah.
That's her character arc. She goes from being someone who couldn't, like, put a roadkill armadillo out of its misery to someone who's totally willing to just murder at the bat of an eye.
Maybe that's actually saying something about there not being that much of a difference between the chainsaw family and, like, your average human. You're like, you're one night away from...
It's all a matter of degrees.
I like that it follows the trend of the Texas Chainsaw movies where all the time your protagonists are like, you just don't care that they die. You're like, I thought they were annoying.
Yeah.
And just like I was getting mad when he was trying to change the tire and he's like, can you shine the light on here? And like 8 times she starts like looking around and he was like, put the fucking light on here. It was like a very real, like, will you put the fucking light on for him? He needs to see. Like,
this movie, we could spend a whole episode unpacking the gender dynamics of this movie, dude, because like that relationship dynamic that they have is too real.
yeah.
It is too real, and I understand both sides of it too much, and I'm ashamed in some ways of how well I am acquainted with both sides of their thinking. That's a whole other thing. We'll have to rewatch this movie next year and just do an episode about the gender dynamics of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 Leatherface. But this brings us past the two young leads to fucking Benny.
Benny, all right.
Benny is maybe the greatest lead character of any slasher movie because he is what
Definitely.
you want, right?
Yeah.
He's at every slasher movie ever. What's the thing? It's like, oh, don't do that. Don't go there. Fucking, why are you doing that? Benny's a survivalist.
Yeah.
So Benny knows what to do in this situation, and he pretty much does it, right? There are
exactly.
very few moments where Benny fucks up.
And there are two... That actually reminds me of two aspects that I really wanted to talk about. Was the tropes of the slasher film are so overdone in this film that all I could think about was, because this came out in 1990, and I don't remember, what year did Scream come out?
96.
96. I can absolutely see why Scream was so effective as like a parody of slasher films, when now that I've watched like this like tail end of garbage slasher films where it's like, oh my god, the car won't start. Like, it was just the most drawn out, annoying tropes.
Yeah.
And but that aside, Benny was fucking awesome.
Benny is a fascinating character to write into your slasher film.
Have you noticed that actor in any other
Ken
films?
Rafi, he's the lead in Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, Ken Foree.
Ken Foree, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I didn't even notice what you said.
I said Rafi. That's my bad. Ken Foree.
He's Dawn of the Dead. He's great, but I feel like he just gets like exponentially greater as he gets older.
Yeah.
I had first seen him, I think, in Rob Zombie's remake of Halloween. Mm-hmm. That he's the one where Michael Myers. That's where he gets his like blue one piece.
Oh, he gets his onesie from this?
Yeah. And he's like, his name's Joe Grizzly, first of all, and he has like big sideburns, and he's like looking at a dirty magazine in a gas station bathroom.
Yes, okay, yes, I remember that.
And he just delivers that line, "I'm Joe Grizzly, bitch." And it's just like the most fucking awesome every time that guy is in something. But he always plays the same, like, basically that character.
Yeah.
But it was really cool to see him not have, like, the bit part. So he got to, like, be a little more serious.
It was substantial.
And realistic with it. Ugh. I actually found out, and it worked on me, too, which is bullshit. Apparently, he died in the original cut of the film.
Yeah, at the end, right?
When they showed test audiences, the reaction was so strong they decided to let him, live. And they didn't do it very well because he definitely dies and then he's just like comes back. And I didn't even notice it.
No,
like
me either.
Until it was pointed out that like, yeah, he died and then just like comes back, and I was like, he's fucking so awesome that I literally didn't even question it.
I just bought it.
I was like, sick, Benny's here.
Good.
Like,
I don't even need to know how this happened. I'm just glad. Which makes us exactly the same as those fucking howling test audiences.
Yeah.
I don't even care if it makes sense. Benny needs to be there at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think oh man, kind of a side character, but one of the reasons that I'm so excited that they like redeveloped this family was because the Alfredo, I think his name was,
the gas station guy,
was one of the one that sings.
Yeah,
he was like one of the coolest, like just like tramping through the swamps, like singing some weird country song.
I thought that was Tinker.
Is that Tinker?
I thought that was Tinker. I'm not sure. This movie is... We should mention this. This movie is dark as fuck, not in content, but just in terms of color.
Yeah.
For like 40% of it. So I couldn't... For many of these scenes, I could not tell what the fuck was going on. But I still loved it. You know?
Yeah.
But I think that was Tinker, but I loved him. Yeah.
Yeah, he was great. I think there were a lot of cool choices made in this movie.
Tex, Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah,
as Tex?
how great was he? And I love
he was incredible.
I love seeing those like huge actors that were like, oh, I bet you didn't know that dude was in this crappy horror
Texas
movie 20 years
Chainsaw
ago.
Massacre 3.
Yeah.
The third one.
Yeah. Because I know, like Matthew McConaughey is in the fourth
and
Texas
Renee
Chainsaw.
Zellweger.
Yeah.
And which
I
apparently
believe,
is not very good. But we'll
yeah,
get to
I've
that.
heard that it's pretty like extremely over the top and hammed up.
Maybe we'll love it. I don't know.
I'll probably love it. This is the trend we're going on. Like, yeah, artistic stuff is cool, but like I want to hear fucking heavy metal and have like an 8-foot chainsaw.
The metal at the end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 was righteous.
When they fight and it's just like
Yes.
Benny and Leatherface getting this like, or not Leatherface, it's Viggo Mortensen's character.
Yeah, Benny and Tex.
They get in this fight and it's just like the most 80s cheesy shredding metal.
One of my favorite one-liners from this movie is, I don't know if it's during that fight, but it's with Benny. It's a Benny one-liner. I think it might be with Alfredo. Benny says, "Why are you doing this?"
Yeah.
And Alfredo says, "We're hungry." And Benny says, "Haven't you ever heard of pizza?"
That was like an instant classic.
That moved me from being like, "Wow, this movie's surprisingly good," to like, "I love this movie and I'll probably watch it yearly for the rest of my life."
Yeah, I didn't buy it. Usually, if there's a movie that I'm kind of interested in, I have a lot of movies, so I'll pick it up even if I've never seen it. But I didn't do that with Leatherface because I thought I was going to hate it, and I was like, I'm not going to buy two. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't want to own the first one and the third one and not the second. But then I watched it and I was like, yeah, I'm going to fucking buy the first one and the third one. Fuck the second one.
The second one is garbage.
I don't care about
that. But the third
that.
one also is like a 99-cent rental on Amazon, which is like, when does that ever happen? I don't know. Getting into fucking home economics on this podcast. But, dude, there are no 99-cent rentals on Amazon. It felt like going to the movie store. It was that similar level of investment. It was like you go to the video rental store and you rent a movie for $1. Whereas most movies on Amazon are like $3-4 to rent. Yeah. But man, best 99 cents I've ever spent.
I think one of the things that had turned me off from watching it was on the cover it has like the chainsaw where it says like the Saw is family. And I was
great
just like,
line.
This is gonna suck.
But you know what? In context, that's a great scene.
I think, what else is there to say about it? I mean, I had noticed that there was some really cool cinematography.
I'd like to do a shot-by-shot analysis of this movie.
We can.
It's really good.
It wasn't, I was surprised that it wasn't filmed in Texas. It was filmed in California, but...
didn't they built the house to film it in before they even had a director. So then Jeff Burr comes on, he's like, sweet, let's film it in Texas. New Line was like, yes, awesome. One problem.
We already have to do it in California.
We built the house already.
Yeah.
We have a lot of plans for this.
This is bigger than you, Jeff. This isn't your little pet project,
Jeff,
okay?
This isn't over till we say it's over.
But there was a cool shot of a perfectly flat horizon with the sky and the ground, and then I think the car like flies across it. Mm-hmm. And there was just some really cool stuff like that.
Well, like at the very end of the movie, I believe this is the last shot of the film. Like the crazy last scene happens, and it's like a smash cut to just a center frame sun. Yep. Like a real callback to the first movie. Yeah. And then I'm pretty sure it just rolls credits after that.
Yeah,
right?
I think you're right, actually.
So many things about this movie. This was let's call it a reboot, right?
Yeah,
it was a requel, a squee-boot, whatever we want to call it.
Definitely squee-boot. That was definitely
this movie was a squee-boot before we were used to not just squee-boots, but squee boots that actually respect the original material.
Yeah.
Without trying to ape it. I felt like this movie had a very healthy respect and love for the movie that had come out 16 years earlier. And it wanted to not remake it, not like do a shot-by-shot remake of it, but make something new that harkens back to the original in respectful and enjoyable ways, which is not a balance that I was expecting from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, a film that came out in 1990, right? And which was before we knew how to make good movies.
Right, and the best thing about it to me was the way they kind of danced that line of the squee boot was you could watch it and enjoy it as the third film, and I feel like you could also just watch it and enjoy it as, as the first one. And which I can't believe that, you have 1990 and then the first one came out in 1974. That is such a long time for like an age when you couldn't just stream it from your computer. Like if this new movie was coming out and it was going to be a big deal and everybody wants to go see it, every town has one video store that you hope has one copy of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I mean, I don't know. I was going to say that it's possible that some video stores like wouldn't carry it on principle, but I don't have any validity in that statement.
Man, you've been to video stores. Those places didn't have any principles.
There's no shame.
Those were cold fucking shrines to capitalism.
Yeah. To attest to that was the video store that I went to. There was this fucking dickhead old man that worked there, but he just let me and my cousin rent whatever we wanted without like ever.
Yeah. You're like 12 years old.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
But so that only took a half hour. That's not bad.
No, not bad at all.
God,
I am excited to watch this movie again.
Me too.
You know what? We'll wait for the wrap up to say what we think of this movie, the words that we would use to describe it. But
sure.
Any final thoughts before we move on? To
no,
3?
most of it I believe I can fit into my little wrap up at the end.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's move to the other part of this.
Okay.
Curtis, sell me on The Exorcist 3.
Okay. So I had this movie recommended to me about a year or so ago, and I watched it, and the first time I watched it, I didn't really like it as much. Like, I thought it was fine. And then I, told my friend that recommended it to me about watching it, and they were like, well, like, they basically asked for the context in which I watched it. And I was like, well, I don't know. Like, I got home from work, and I watched it before my girlfriend got home because she wouldn't want to watch it. And he was just like, nah, man, that's not going to work. He's like, you're a grown man. You're not going to get scared like that. He was like, you got to watch it alone in the middle of the night with all the lights off. Like, that's how movies scare you when you're a grown-up. And I did that this time. I watched it at midnight because I had just been up late editing. And I found it much more effective. Especially to, like, it's a very dialogue-heavy film with a lot of... I can admit that there's a lot of, like, underdeveloped ideas. So if you're literally doing anything else, or maybe it was because I've seen it before, there were, the more I watch it, I'm sure there's a limit, but I've watched it a couple times. I actually watched it again since the first time I watched it the other day. And you just kind of have these, I did anyway, have these little, like, oh, okay, like, little moments. But I think at the end of it, I really liked, it's kind of the same thing with The Exorcist 2, where I was really wrapped up in, like, the context of the film more than the film itself, but I really liked it because it's very different. It's a supernatural thriller, but not in the same way as the first one. And I really like that it's just at the root of it, it's just this detective story, and it's just it
feels like 7 before 7.
Yeah, it's just a cop and a priest trying to, kind of figure out what's going on about these satanic related murders going on around the town. And I mean, obviously it's a little bit deeper than that, but that I think when I watched it, not as just a horror, this is going to scare you, when I kind of realized what I liked about it was this slowly unfolding, they're kind of putting the pieces of the case together, the puzzle together. That's what kind of sold me on it. So you didn't feel as strongly about it.
I just didn't like it. I think William Peter Blatty is let's say a really bad writer. No, okay, let's say William Peter Blatty is a mediocre writer and a really bad director. This dude has no business directing a fucking motion picture, a feature film.
So, speaking of
it feels like an episode of Law and Order SVU. It looks like
you're
one.
Killing me. Hey, there were helicopters. This one had a budget. Like, this was no Exorcist 2.
Exorcist 2 had a budget, Curtis. They got helicopter shots of Africa in that movie, and it looks like a fucking Mode 7 airship flight over the Super Nintendo Final Fantasy VI landscape. All right, I loved it. Let's not talk more about Exorcist 2.
Okay,
this is gonna drive a rift between us, Curtis.
There's one thing that I don't know. I guess I can't say for certain how I land about Blatty and his writing or directing style, but I do have to bring up The Exorcist 2 one more time, because I feel like the most significant thing about this franchise is how badly, like, Blatty got, like, screwed over throughout the whole thing.
Oh, tell me more.
So I just feel like, as I'm putting it all together, having watched all three, you have a guy who didn't set out to make a movie. He wrote a book, and it was a very popular book. And then when he was approached to, like, make a movie about it, or whatever, he didn't direct it, but he wanted to be a part of it. You know, his name is all over it. It's always...
He wanted to direct it.
Did he want to direct it?
Yeah,
I actually didn't know that.
He wrote the screenplay, and I believe he wanted to direct it. And I might be making that up. He
wasn't able to direct it, and he had disagreements with Friedkin about scenes that should or should not be in the movie, and Friedkin was like, well, I'm sorry, man, but I'm the director, so I'm going to cut up your story, and that's just how movies work. And then they wanted to do a sequel, so they approached both of those guys, and they're like, hey, you want to do a sequel to this story you wrote? And he was like, no, I don't. No. I don't at all. And they're like, well, it sucks. We're going to do it without you then. Sorry. Like, we're just going to use your characters, literally the little girl and some of the same people. And I did think that was a bummer. And then he finally, years later, gets around to just writing his own sequel to his original story. It was Legion, right? It was book it was based off of. So he goes back to Hollywood and kind of does like hey, I made a sequel to my book, and I wrote a screenplay for it, and I want to direct it, and we're just going to ignore the shit you guys did to my story in the second one.
The second one is a betrayal of the first one. Yeah. But the key is that I think the first film is a film that deserves to be betrayed. So that's why I like the second one so much.
And but then it was just like, yeah, we'll let you direct it. And he's like, oh, cool, it's called Legion. Like, yeah, we'd rather really have you call it The Exorcist 3. You're like, yeah, I don't want to call it that. No one's going to see it if it's called Legion. They'll watch The Exorcist 3, which demands that he pays attention to the second one, because people will pay attention to it. And then they're like, hey, there's no exorcism scene in this movie. And he's like, yeah, I didn't fucking want to call it The Exorcist. Like, well, you can't really have a movie called The Exorcist without an exorcism scene in it. And just to say, I didn't fucking want one in it. And they're like, yeah, we're just going to throw it in real quick, 5 seconds at the end. And I just, on that level, I just feel really bad for that guy, because every time he tries to have his story adapted, they just take it from him. And it bothers him, because in 1990 or whatever, or 2000, they re-released like his version of the film, of the original Exorcist, because 30 years later it still bothered him that those scenes were cut out. And I just I think it was good that some of those things were cut out, and probably good that they intervened a little bit, because, as you said, he's not the strongest. It's hard to just step in and like direct something for the first time.
Yes, it is.
And so I think they made the right move, but I do on a level just feel bad for him, where it's like every turn was like an obstacle for him.
Let me give you my alternate narrative of the life of William Peter Blatty.
Okay.
All right. You're William Peter Blatty, okay? It's the 60s or the 70s or whatever. You're Catholic, and you feel that that culture is being degraded, specifically Catholic culture. So you write a horror novel about the degradation of traditional Catholic values in modern America. And I'm going to back up a little bit and say that I believe William Peter Blatty is in the same class of authors as, say, a Stephen King or a Peter Straub, or that type of horror writer, right? Populist horror writers, people who are trying their best to pick up on cultural undercurrents and twist those into horrific narratives so that people will buy their books at airports and not really know why they're scared by them. But, like, you know, Stephen King, people are scared of fucking school shootings and bullying, so he writes Carrie, right? And it really hits the zeitgeist. And Stephen King has proven remarkably capable of knowing what's going to scare people over the long run. And that's why he still has a career. That's why he's one of the greatest writers of all time. He doesn't seem to understand why it scares people. He just knows what's going to scare people. I think William Peter Blatty got lucky. He's a fucking gold prospector that happened upon a vein, and he's been mining that same vein of like, people are scared that Catholicism isn't as important as it used to be. And he's been mining that same vein for, God, going on several decades now, right? By the time Exorcist 3 came out, he had been still chopping away at that same vein for 17 years at least, right? Between the time that the first movie came out and the time that the third movie came out. And yeah, I don't think he's a good writer. I think he got lucky. But I think that the success of his book tricked him into thinking that he was a great writer.
Sure.
When in reality, he was a lucky writer. He happened to write a book that fucking made people who still... Like, America, on many levels, is a deeply Catholic nation. Catholicism runs through our government and our culture in some really weird, unexpected ways. And I think that Blatty tapped into people's fear of the degradation of their culture. And people interpreted their culture as Catholic culture, so he made a Catholic horror novel. By the time we get to The Exorcist 3... his insistence that the degradation of Catholicism and the desecration of Catholic symbols is the scariest thing that can happen starts to seem fucking stupid. Like, a murder in a confessional booth is all well and good. Like, I'm ready to be scared by that if need be, but like, I need to be in the right mindset. I need to consciously try to put myself into William Peter Blatty's shoes and say, like, all right, I need to imagine that I'm a Catholic, and I need to imagine that I see the confessional booth as like a place, a sacred place, a place that nothing bad should ever happen in. And I need to imagine that someone confessing to murder would be a really scary moment for a priest, which probably it would be, but it's kind of cartoonish in this movie. I don't know why I'm harping so much on that scene. It's probably just because it's the one I remember, and the reason I remember it is actually because I kind of liked it. Like, I like it when a movie is really straightforward about its obsessions. Yeah. Which, if The Exorcist 3 is anything, it is straightforward about its obsessions.
See, sorry.
That's my alternative narrative of the life of William Peter Blatty. Not a great writer, got lucky, tricked himself into thinking he was a great writer, and then directed a movie because, I don't know, hopefully he regards that as a mistake too, because with the exception of a couple moments, the moment with the hedge clippers in the insane asylum is a pretty good scene.
Yeah, that's pretty... There were a few, to me, really scary images in the film. But I'm interested in what you said about having to have it not be scary unless you put yourself into that perspective, because I had also heard recently that, you know, The Exorcist, the first one, was, you know, really only scary to people that were religious, and then like non-religious people like were like, whatever, it was okay. But that doesn't, for me at least, I'm not affected by that for some reason, because I am also non-religious, but I can still get into a movie. Like, if I watch Chucky, I don't really think a doll is going to come to life, but I can still be scared at the prospect of what if it did. And I think that, you know, The Exorcist and The Exorcist 3 work on me, even as like a non-religious person, because I just kind of like, what if it did happen? Yeah, that'd be pretty fucking scary. Like, yeah, all right. Like, but I think there were some legitimately scary moments in the film. One almost cheesier than scary, but still pretty fucking scary to me. in the very beginning when the big gust of wind blows open the church and the eyes open on the
Christ.
Yeah.
Oh my God! What was
Christ.
that?
I thought it was pretty scary. Like, I don't know, man.
I don't even know if I was scared by it or not. I would say I was puzzled by it. Like, is this something... Is he like one of those dolls that when you lay it down, its eyes close, and when you stand it up, its eyes open?
I think...
Is someone going to feed him a little binky bottle, and he's going to pee himself?
No, I'm surprised you didn't know. Every hanging Jesus in a church is like that. If you laid them down, their eyes would open. Yeah, that's surprised you didn't know that. But that was interesting, and I thought the scene with the shears and the white costume thing...
Yeah, that's interesting.
That was pretty scary. And also because it kind of sets it as unsettling in the first place, because that shot is unlike any other shot in that movie. Like, I feel like that whole movie is like just like close-ups of like not even people talking at each other. It just cuts back and forth from close-ups.
It is all just close-ups.
And then when you watch that scene where it has that kind of wide shot that just stays there for like a minute, you're like, and then people aren't even talking anymore. They're just like walking around, going about their
business, going about your like night shift business.
What's gonna happen? And then, but it actually is scary. Like, even when you know something scary is gonna happen, to me it was still like, oh, holy shit.
He waits until the point where you're like, all right, fucking nothing's gonna happen, and then something happens.
This is just an interesting choice.
That's an effective. It's the only interesting choice in this movie.
I really like the like the crawling around on top of the ceiling and stuff.
All right, yes, that was good.
That was pretty cool.
That was cool, though it was a little funny too.
Yeah, I
mean, she's like laughing at him. And
yeah.
shit.
Also, kind of funny because I just hate to think like you really can't see her. Nobody sees her. Like, no one happens to be looking at the ceiling or has peripheral vision. Like,
I think you would be surprised at how rarely people actually look up. Like, there could be something right above my head right now. I wouldn't
just
have
a bunch
any
of
idea.
sick plushies.
My worst fear. My worst nightmare.
Oh wow, they're all looking at me.
Oh god. Batman's looking at me.
This is kind of moving on to a new part of it, but I really liked how the story just kind of worked for me. Like, it was kind of boring and kind of dialogue.
I don't think I understood the story, so I can't really speak to it. What is the story of this movie?
So, I really liked how you had these two characters from the first film, Father Dyer and Kinderman, the Lieutenant Kinderman.
Those were the same characters?
Not the same actors.
Okay,
they're the same.
So fucking George C. Scott is playing the...
Right.
Okay, yes. All right. Which one was the father? Father Dyer.
His friend, the one that recommended him to, and tells the mother
in the
about...
First one.
Yeah,
okay.
in the first one.
Okay, all right.
So it's those two characters. And you always kind of, when you have a horror movie, a lot of times they end on a rather abrupt note, and a lot of times you wonder like, what's going to happen after that? Mm-hmm. Like in Texas Chainsaw Massacre when she's laughing crazily, and, it just ends, and you're like, what's going to happen to her? Yeah. And I really like that in this film they just kind of approach it as like nothing really happened. Like, these guys, it's 15 years later, they're both still very affected by what they saw or didn't see. There's no real, like, yeah, the devil possessed a girl. They don't know exactly what happened, but they know their friend died, or allegedly died. And they just are both torn up about it. And both of them actually make a comment about how, they say they're going to see A Wonderful Life, and they both say they're going to cheer up their friend who hasn't gotten over the death of Father... of Father, whatever his name, Karras. Yeah. So I like that aspect of it, just two friends that their lives kind of stopped when Father Karras died, and nothing could nothing could get them past it.
There was always a hollow spot. They experienced a really traumatic event, and they had no sense of closure about it. I guess I did like that about the characters.
But the first time I watched it, I actually didn't even know that. I didn't really even pick up that they were the same characters, because I didn't watch The Exorcist immediately before I watched 3. I hadn't seen it for a couple of years, and then 3 didn't really sink in very well the very first time I watched it. I just like that it sets it up like that, And then, you know, Brad Dourif just gives like the most crazy performance.
Brad Dourif is so interesting in this movie. I hate the dialogue that he's delivering, but I love the way he's delivering it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't really have much of a problem with the dialogue, but I do think it is outshined by his delivery of it. I can definitely agree with that.
It feels like William Peter Blatty is trying too hard to be spooky with that dialogue. I don't. Maybe that's a me thing, but we can both definitely agree that Brad Dourif, to some extent or another, elevates the material.
His voice, he just has that like, just this like croaky kind of throaty delivery, and this just. He really is just savoring the taste of these words, where he knows what he is saying is disgusting and really bothers
William Peter Blatty.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yes, that is what
yes,
I was
it does.
I really think he kind of. I immediately liked him the first time I watched it because of that performance. And everything else was kind of in the shadow of that performance. And then the more I watch it, you know, I'm finding other things that really kind of stick out for me.
George C. Scott's performance in this movie, dude.
Oh, dude, it was good.
George C. Scott's performance in this movie is classic fucking man delivering man dialogue about just men talking to men. Is there a woman in this movie?
No.
Does William Peter Blatty know that women exist? Like, he seems to think they exist up until they're 13 years old, and only then for the purposes of being tortured and tied to beds. Fucking asshole.
Yeah. I don't think there are any women in this movie.
No, it's all about men talking to each other.
Yeah.
Which is clearly how all the world's problems are going to be solved. Certainly it's not how all the world's problems have been created. Just men talking to each other.
You know, but... You know, and I hate to defend that, but
you don't need to defend it. I want to hear your defense.
I need to hear you defend.
I don't need to hear you defend it, but I want to hear it. Now that I know that you have a defense of it, I want to.
This is not a good defense. This is not something that's going to win over the crowd. But I guess I just I can let it get by in the sense that. This film is just so hyper-focused on these three characters that it really nothing else exists outside of that. So it's the presence of women is not the only thing missing from this movie. It's like a really developed plot or like a really nice explanation of like why does Father Karras sometimes look like Father Karras and sometimes like Brad Dourif.
I have to assume it's because he has a little bit of the devil in him, and Brad Dourif is representing the demon Pazuzu.
And it's hard to please don't call him Pazuzu. That was only in the second one.
Nope, no. That's in the novel. That's
is it?
William Peter Blatty's novel, The Exorcist,
then
calls him
I
Pazuzu.
retreated.
So rescind your bullshit comment, Curtis. I need an official retraction.
We will officially retract that. I'm
Corrections and omissions.
Putting it in the notes for the archives. I was wrong.
About Pazuzu.
Yeah.
Write it.
I have to write the word Pazuzu.
I'll spell it for you.
Yes. And I think they weren't very clear on like, is he actually shape-shifting or is this just how you see him when this part of him projects itself?
Or did the guy who played Father Karras just not want to come back for a whole movie?
Yeah.
So we needed to come up with some justification. We filmed all this shit in an afternoon.
Yeah. Although, I mean, that's definitely possible. I can see that. But I also think it's possible that the actor that plays Father Karras could not have delivered lines.
Oh, yeah.
Like Brad Dourif. So,
yeah, no.
I don't know if they I highly doubt it was like planned around the fact that he couldn't deliver those lines, but it's just a weird unanswered, there's just a lot of I don't know. There's just not unanswered questions in this movie. I don't feel like there are any huge loopholes or any plot holes rather, but there's just a lot of things that were just maybe would have been nice if it had been developed a little more. Mm-hmm. And I actually would really like to read both of these books.
Yeah.
Because
Maybe we should do that.
Yeah, do a book club.
Fucking book club. Ben and Curt book club. We'll read The Exorcist and Legion.
Look, if we're trying to just extend Texorcism month, that's a way to do
it. The rest of this podcast is Texorcism month. Yeah.
Then obviously we'll have to get back into Resident Evil 4.
Obviously. Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
That'll be great to draw comparisons from Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Of course. Mm-hmm. And The Exorcist.
Probably. Parasites. Devil.
Hey, you know what? It works. It's good enough.
If it's enough of a connection for me to make. Okay, so what else do we have?
The women thing really bothers me.
Does it?
Yeah, because
I can see that.
Thinking about it more, because I'm comparing it to other movies that have had that charge of being exclusively men talking to each other and of being exclusively about male relationships. And some movies that I really love have fallen into that category. Edgar Wright's movies tend to mostly be about men and mostly about men's relationships with other men. Mm-hmm. Especially like The World's End and Hot Fuzz are a couple of my favorite movies of his, both of which have very few roles for women in them.
Sure.
But what I think I still like about those movies is that they at least acknowledge that women exist and are important in the world, which The Exorcist 3 completely fails to do.
So...
William Peter Blatty in The Exorcist 3 has constructed a cathedral to masculinity and has decided that this is the cathedral that needs to replace the desecrated Catholic Church. Is that the only way to make the culture survive is for men to bond with men. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but like that's the message. That's the predominant message that I took from The Exorcist 3, is that male friendship is like something that is as sacred as any Catholic symbol and is as important to maintain and preserve.
So my argument that every other aspect of reality has just been pushed away
really
doesn't hold up.
That was the source of my argument. Now that was the moment I realized, like, yeah, it has, and that's weird. Like, that's out of the ordinary, because usually movies that are mostly about men at least acknowledge that women exist and are important, even if they're not important to that plot. You get the sense from female side characters that, like, oh, these are women who could potentially have lives of their own. We literally can't remember a single female character from The Exorcist 3. Mm-hmm. The nurse who gets killed.
As I say, that really
gets her head chopped off.
Oh, that dreadful nurse. And they don't even put a good woman role in it. She's just like, has a horrible voice, and just like when he stumbles into the room with her and the patient, she's just screaming at him for like a minute straight, and it's like, it was an accident. Fucking man, please calm down,
man.
So I do have a question. For you, though. I just thought of this, and this isn't in any way you having to like justify your opinion. I'm just curious that in this movie, given what the story is about, I'm wondering what role could have been injected into it that would have been for a woman to play, not like a womanly role, but just, if you needed another character. I'm wondering what could have been done. Also considering, like, the woman who played the mother in the first one wanted no fucking part ever again to do with it. And I don't think Linda Blair, she came back, but like reluctantly the first time. And then it was like,
she knew the second one was going to be an interesting movie.
I almost think that, I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but I know for a fact that she would come back as long as she didn't have to wear the makeup, which, I mean, what else? That was the only reason people really cared that she was in it, so...
Yeah. You're right. The Exorcist is a bad movie.
I actually really like Linda Blair as the nice, cute Reagan. She's a very sweet child. It's like a very... like
yes, she is.
I feel connected to her.
That's the only thing she has to be, so yes.
So, if you can't have those two actors... And like I said, this isn't you. Like, if you don't have an answer, it's not like your opinion's wrong. Just what role do you think would have been a good role for a female actor?
I think the movie would have had to have been gutted. I don't think you could have told the same story. Yeah. I think you would have had to try to tell a better story than this one. A story that has a more complete worldview. I don't think that every movie needs to address every facet of life, or every work of art needs to address every facet of life. But I think that whatever chunk they pick out to address, they need to at least do a responsible job of addressing it in a coherent and somewhat complete way. The Exorcist chooses to try to address the degradation of American society and how this is a horrific thing and how it's going to lead to the desecration and devolution into something disgusting and demonic. And it chooses to address this without ever acknowledging that women have a role in society. It's trying to address a very big topic, but it's taking a really myopic, narrow view to it.
Okay.
I guess that's what I object to about The Exorcist. And it's not that I just think that... I mean, obviously, you know this about me. I don't think that women should be, like, just shoved into every movie.
Right.
But I think that if you are making a movie that is about a big topic where a person would say, like, wow, I wonder what he's going to say about women when he's talking about the degradation of American society. And then the writer-director just chooses to say nothing about them. It's like, do you care about women at all? You know, I gotta say, though, he's an author from the 60s. So the answer is probably not.
Nope.
I don't want to cast aspersions on him. I'm sure he's very nice to women.
Yeah.
But insofar as a person's worldview is reflected in their art, William Peter Blatty's art says some bad things about his view of women. And William, I'm sorry if you're listening. I don't.
We know he's listening.
We
so
know you're
just get
listening.
it out.
We know this came up on your Google alert. Just try to take this in the right sense. You know, like it's not about trying to force women into your work. It's about trying to force women into your mind. William Peter Blatty clearly doesn't have any room for the feminine experience in his brain, and if you're going to be a writer, I think you are obligated to reflect the experiences, at least in some small way, of anyone who's relevant to the material that you're trying to address. I hope that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm actually looking up now. I'm trying to see what year William Peter Blatty was born in, because I don't know how old he was.
I believe he was in his 60s.
Jesus, he was born in 1928.
Yeah, dude was like 63 or 62, right? Because I looked this up as well.
Yeah.
Because this feels like a movie directed by an old man who's never directed a movie before. Like he clearly he saw the fucking like Wizard of Oz or something when he was young, and he was like, "That's as good as movies ever need to be." Not that the Wizard of Oz is not a great movie. The Wizard of Oz.
Hold the fucking phone.
We need to do a Wizard of Oz episode. I've returned to that movie recently, and the Wizard of Oz is a fucking stone cold masterpiece.
Fucking incredible, right?
The Wizard of Oz is an amazing film. We should plan our Wizard of Oz episode right now, because I'm really excited
do it on
for
the
it.
air.
Yeah. But
obviously, you're going to have to read the book so we can get the full context of. You could read it in a day. You'd be
fantastic. It's a fantastic book. I've read the book.
Oh,
before.
good.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm happy to reread it. But yeah, William Peter Blatty, whatever the movies were like when he was a kid, that just imprinted upon him as like, this is just what movies are like. I can just write one of my books and then transform it into one of the movies of my childhood. But movies don't work that way, dude. Also, I get the feeling that he doesn't really understand the movies that he likes.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to have spent much time studying film or like techniques or cinematography or like pacing or any of the things that matter to a director.
You know who I had just realized this week actually is essentially the same story as William Peter Blatty, but much more effective, was Clive Barker from the Hellraiser. I did not realize that he had like written a Hellraiser novel, then was like, hey, I'm gonna direct a movie about this, and then made like a horror masterpiece. Like
Clive Barker, yeah, I love Clive Barker. I think his direction in he directed Hellraiser, right?
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure.
I almost want to say he did the second one too.
Yeah. But really great movies. Clive Barker is a very different person from William Peter Blatty. He's a gay man, so he understands the world better than the fucking classic chauvinist William Peter Blatty. Sorry, William. Again, I don't mean
Sorry, Bill. I know you're listening.
Billy, listen.
Yeah. Oh man, you know what? He died this year.
William Peter Blatty?
Bill is not listening.
He's listening somewhere. Up in that Catholic heaven of his.
Yeah, I really hope he cashed in on that Catholic heaven.
He can just indulge in ritual all day. He can just judge everyone around him. Do all the things Catholics love to do. You know,
this is actually really...
Sorry, Catholics.
Really interesting to learn about the fact that he passed away on January 12th, 2017. So you know what the last major thing he did was?
What?
in October of 2016, a mere 4 months before he died, Scream Factory released a collector's edition of The Exorcist 3 on Blu-ray, which has the William Peter Blatty director's cut on it.
Oh.
So
Did he do a commentary for any of these movies?
I don't know.
I would be really interested to hear his commentary about his decisions that he made on this movie. I want to hear
very interesting.
I want to hear a long-form version of what he thinks went right and wrong with The Exorcist 3.
You know, it's a shame that we have decided to do Ben and Curt once a week, because if we had still been doing it bi-weekly, we could have just kept Texorcism going forever. Just done.
Not that we're not going to.
Every
Anyway.
other week would just be a random Ben and Curt till it hurts. And then
Something related. This week we watched the fucking William Peter Blatty director's cut with commentary of The Exorcist 3. And now you get to listen to our views on it. Curt, this is the 4th time I've watched this movie. I love it now.
hearing his...
I too hate women now.
Yeah. So I really like director's cuts. And sometimes it's nice to... I really hope there is one, because sometimes it's nice to listen to a director commentary on a not great movie, because you can at least get oh, okay, that's what they were trying to do.
Yeah. But then sometimes it's like, oh, they were amazing to work with.
Yeah.
Oh, we had a hell of a time getting that shot. Oh, they were amazing to work with, though. The cinematographer, really incredible.
You know, another equally awful director commentary, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. His director commentary is, the whole thing is him explaining to you why you're dumb for not liking his film.
I agree with Rob Zombie
I fucking knew it.
about Halloween 2. I love that movie.
I fucking knew you would, Ben. Damn it.
I am history's greatest monster.
Yeah. How's it feel to just be against everyone, Ben?
Feels great, Kurt. I get to enjoy Halloween 2 like nobody else does.
Well, you can just have your Halloween 2 and Exorcist 2 marathon.
Yeah.
And I'll just watch renowned classics.
Like The Exorcist 3. What are
you
we
know,
doing?
we're in the middle on that one. That's that would be a classic if more people would watch it. I'm throwing my fist down on that one.
We can both agree that Texas Chainsaw Massacre... I almost said Texas Chainsaw Masterpiece 3.
Yes.
Which it is.
Yes.
And more people should watch it.
It is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have anything else to say about
I don't think so either.
So...
What, we just hit an hour?
Yeah, we just hit about an hour.
Yeah.
So let's wrap up. Let's figure out what to say about these two films together.
All right. You want me to go first?
Sure.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 is essential.
Yes.
If you're a fan of horror. And maybe if you're not. If you're just a fan of good, fun movies, I still think Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 is pretty essential. You're going to have a good time. You're going to see a young Viggo Mortensen just acting the fuck out of it, right? You're going to have a good time with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. It's essential. The Exorcist 3 is completely non-essential. There is no reason to watch this movie.
Okay. I too agree that Leatherface is an essential viewing. That movie was so much more fun than I ever would have thought it could be, and I fucking hate to say that it's perfect.
I can't think of a part that I didn't like.
But the whole thing is entertaining. It doesn't drag at all. All the characters are fine.
It's like a solid hour 20 also. It's a short movie.
And it moves right along, and you can watch it as the third entry in the series. You can watch it if you've never seen anyone. You can watch it as it has that trashy horror, not a fucking A-list horror film by any means, but it's entertaining enough where if you don't even like horror, you can enjoy it.
You still might have a good time. Get together with some friends and watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3.
Partially,
it's essential
because for the sake they didn't want to have that X rating. This is because it's before NC-17, so there's not that much gore.
Though I guess there is a director's cut out there.
From my understanding, the director's cut is not much of a direct. I think. Did you watch it on Amazon?
Yeah.
That might have been the director's cut.
Cool.
Because I know in the theatrical cut, one scene in particular that clued me in that it might be the director's cut was they don't show that guy's ear get blown off in the original
in
the original cut.
All right. Well, I can only imagine how bad the theatrical cut must have been.
Yeah, that might have been bad.
Might have been tough. Things might have made less sense.
Yeah. So, I think every person should check out. I would also consider Leatherface essential. If not, I mean, it can be. I feel like it can be enjoyed as a fantastic horror movie or just a really awesome, gross out, funny hangout movie. And Exorcist 3, while underdeveloped, is still scary, and I still think it's a very good movie. I'm sold on it. I watched it under the right conditions.
Which I didn't. I should acknowledge that I watched it on a Sunday afternoon.
Okay. A week or so ago.
It was rainy out, but it was the afternoon.
So you're there. And then I'm doing the 31 Days of Horror, so I've been, the other night I wasn't sure what to watch, and I was like, I'm just going to fucking watch Exorcist 3 again, because it was sick. And I enjoyed it again. Which is literally
what I did with The Exorcist 2. And I am now understanding how crazy you thought I was for doing that.
I don't know. I think you might be crazier. I don't think that's the same.
Hey, society may agree with you, but I think that objectively, The Exorcist 2 is a much better movie than The Exorcist 3. Objectively. And I stand by that.
All I can say is I can only state facts, Ben. And the fact of the matter is, The Exorcist 2 is considered by many to be one of the worst films ever made. The Exorcist 3 is considered by many to be
surprisingly good.
It has a pretty strong base, and if more people expose themselves to it, they would enjoy it.
Under no circumstances should you expose yourself to The Exorcist 3. Use prophylaxis if you do.
Wow. Okay. So where do we...
I'm taking too hard a line against The Exorcist 3. I didn't hate that movie.
Sometimes though, when you're kind of cold about something that other people are super hot about, it makes you hate it. Like maybe that's what we're like, no, Curt, fuck off. It's fucking garbage.
Movie.
So I would recommend you watch it. I can't tell you that it's like essential and your life is going to be different, but I would just say it's worth watching to figure out how you feel about it. Don't write it off as a garbage sequel.
And I would say that you shouldn't watch it, but I can't tell you what to do. You're not in the room with me.
You couldn't even meet me in the middle there. You couldn't even...
Don't take my word for it. Yeah. I watched The Exorcist 3, so you don't have to. It's fine.
I'm worried about these episodes because I worry that people aren't going to listen because they're just like, I'm not gonna fucking watch The Exorcist 3. And then they'll never get to hear me rave about how good it is. Mm-hmm. Or they'll have the same thought that I did about Leatherface, where it's like, this movie's gonna fucking suck. Mm-hmm. I'm watching it because I'm obligated. And then, realize that it's a horror masterpiece.
It's actually really, really great. It's one of the best slasher movies, in my opinion.
Yep. Top 10 slasher movies next week. No, we're not going to do that.
All 10 of mine are Leatherface.
Yeah. So, is that about what we're looking for this?
Yeah, I think we've gotten what we were looking for. I think we've extracted the ore.
And I hate to say this, but I'm a little bit... I haven't done any really research for our next episode.
Me either.
So some of this information might not be completely factual. But next week, we're continuing with our last week of the Texorcism. Theoretically, unless our Amazon Prime gets the book here fast enough for us to read it for the week after that.
Is there an Exorcist video game we can play?
I actually don't know.
I know there's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre video game.
Is there?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I
do know that. I don't know exactly where the Exorcist franchise falls off, because there are so many movies that are called, like, The Last Exorcism or The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Like,
The Last Exorcism? Have you seen The Last Exorcism?
No, I haven't.
It's actually pretty good.
I can't judge I can't trust your opinion on that.
As
based on your opinions on Exorcist 1, 2,
Here's the thing. Sometimes I sometimes I hate things that are good for very specific reasons. I look at the big air quotes around good. Sometimes I hate things that are generally agreed to be good for weird specific reasons, such as they're in deep down misogyny. But I very rarely like things that are bad, though you would say The Exorcist too. So just put all that in the fucking trash. The Last Exorcism is a pretty good found footage horror movie.
I'm willing to admit that I was a little too caught up. I may have been a little too caught up in the context of The Exorcist 2.
Yes, watch it again, Curtis.
And if I may watch it again at some point, and if going into it, I think I maybe had like held marks against it because I knew that nobody in the first one wanted anything to do with it, and it's kind of it's just like a weird dream world movie.
That's exactly how I would describe it. Here's what we do.
Is it Halloween 3? Is it, if you watch it without the context of any other Halloween movies, it's like pretty good?
Yes, I would say that's a great comparison.
Okay.
What we're going to do now is we're going to wait a year. After Texorcism month, we're going to do Texorcism month part 2, where we watch The Exorcist 2 and The Exorcist 3 again, and you and I try to look at them with the most favorable possible eyes, because I think I might have approached The Exorcist 3 as like, this fucking can't be as good as The Exorcist 2.
Yeah.
Ain't no way. No way this is as good as The Exorcist
Look
2.
at us making compromises.
Making compromises.
This is friendship right here.
It's gonna take a year for us to get to this point, and in all likelihood, I'm still gonna say it's a misogynist piece of trash, and you're gonna say it's fucking incomprehensible bullshit. But I think we should return to these movies, because I think we both have enough. We have a mustard seed of faith in each other.
Yep.
To use Catholic terminology. To use
we're
Christian,
willing to look at it.
Yeah, we're willing to return to these.
So that kind of leaves us with next week.
Yeah.
And like I said, I haven't done a lot of research about these next films we're watching. So I can't. Some of this information may not be factual. But next week we'll be talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation,
the 1994 film with Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger,
and The Exorcist. One is called. Okay, so here's the deal. I believe with The Exorcist 4, they had started filming it, and then they had fired their director at some point. I hope this is not wrong. My general thought is that they had fired the director, and then basically 2 movies of the same footage came out. We're going to edit all of this out when I find out I'm wrong. I believe Dominion is one of the movies, and then Exorcist: The Beginning is the other one. And they are both in the same world as Okay, so Exorcist: The Beginning is a 2004 American horror film and the prequel to the 1973 film The Exorcist. It is the 4th installment in the Exorcist series. Now let's look up Dominion. This is just really great on here to.
It's really awesome. I should really be entertaining the people.
Really,
but I'm
live
also,
editing.
I'm also looking up this information.
Dominion, prequel to The Exorcist, is a 2005 American supernatural horror film directed by Paul Schrader. It is an alternative and original prequel to The Exorcist. So that's what we're dealing with.
Okay, wait. But Exorcist: The Beginning came out in 2004.
Right, but I think because it came out like afterward, but I think it's kind of the same. I don't know. Either way, they're both.
Which one are we watching?
Both. I was thinking we should watch both.
Okay.
And talk about, because they may not be the same movie. I may have been wrong about that, but they're alternate prequels to the same movie.
Okay.
And I believe the reason for that was somebody got fired, and then they ended up putting out 2 cuts of the same movie. But I don't know all the facts about that. And the next generation of Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a whole different shit show of a story. I believe it's also kind of a reboot.
Yeah.
It has Matthew McConaughey in it and Renee Zellweger,
which we've said 3 times, I think, at this point. Yeah. It bears.
For those of you that don't know it, it stars Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger. So
you didn't even say her name right that time.
What did I say?
I thought you said Renelle.
Did I? I may have.
We need to cut the last 5 minutes of the show out.
Nope. So what else is that? So we're going to be talking about that next time. That I think is going to be the end of this year's Texorcism month.
Wait, what movies are we talking about?
We're gonna
three movies.
3 movies.
Are we going to have to watch 2 separate prequels to The Exorcist?
Yeah.
God damn.
Well, we're going to have to compare and contrast here.
We're going to have to make a pro-con list.
It's the finale, Ben. Of course it's going to be an overblown 3-hour garbage cast.
This is going to be the biggest budget cast we've ever done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We may have to record on a Saturday or something to have enough time. Speaking of which, a little Ben and Curt Till It Hurts factoid. Our episode with Leah Douglas, shout out to Leah Douglas, is our most listened to and downloaded episode.
Nice.
I just found that out recently.
I watched these movies with Leah Douglas, actually.
And it was the longest, which leads me to believe that we should just keep going for 3+ hour podcasts.
Longer is better. People are attracted to long stuff. They want a podcast to listen to while they fall asleep. They can't fall asleep to some dinky little hour, 15-minute long podcast.
That's true.
They need 15 minutes at the end of every show where we just we just do real-time research. And I make a mean joke about you misspeaking Renee Zellweger's name, which I'm sorry about.
I don't care.
All right.
So we'll wrap this up for this time.
All
and
right.
that's what we'll be talking about next week. As always, you can listen to more Ben and Curt Till It Hurts and Black Gold Podcast by subscribing to Black Gold Podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. You can also stream it from Buzzsprout or YouTube. If you're a listener of the show, please give us a rating or drop us a review on iTunes. It helps the show a lot, and Ben and I really appreciate it. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at CurtCake5K. And I think that's going to do it for this week.
That's going to do it for this week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
I was digging it, though. I was like, fucking Curtis springing the new intro on me. Like this? Like this? I would have thought you would have warned me about that. I mean, come on.
The balls. I was like fucking vibing out, and then I was like, all right, when do I jump in?
Oh, yeah,
I was
this
like, oh wait,
fucking
no,
sweet.
Ben jumps in. I'm like, wait a minute.
Wait a minute. When does Ben jump in?
This is wrong. Oh, for fuck's sake. Talk about fucking unprofessionalism.
This is all going in the show. This whole bit. We're recording all of this just to show. This is a little behind the scenes. This is typical.
This is
also,
real,
this
baby.
is typical. This is what we do.
All right.
All right, are we ready?
Almost.
Son of a bitch.
Holy fuck. All right. Now we're
Okay,
good.
Fucking, here we go.